is Christy. Do you think it's possible to heal from Crohn's disease without using any medications? I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease about 12 years ago. Here is my report. Crohn's disease, colitis. I was really sick and I did not enjoy my experience with Crohn's disease. This was not the first thing that I had been diagnosed with, and in fact, I had had various different health problems ever since I was in high school. In high school, I had my period for 50 days. That's not normal. I continued to have period problems throughout my early adulthood, and then found out that I had endometriosis when I was in my early 20s. I was in graduate school. I went to the emergency room one time and missed an important exam because I was in so much pain. I thought that my appendix had ruptured. And then, also in graduate school, I found out that I had celiac disease. This was also in my 20s. And I found out that I had hypothyroidism, which does run in my family, the autoimmune kind, Hashimoto's hypothyroidism. My maternal grandmother has this, and also my mother's sister, so my maternal aunt, also has significant thyroid issues. And they were medicated, and both of them seemed to do fine. I also went on medication for hypothyroidism and thought that I was doing fine. And then, of course, because I was diagnosed with celiac disease, I went on a gluten-free diet. And this was a long time ago. This was 20 some years ago. So there were not the same options for gluten-free foods as there are now. But I did the best I could. I started making a lot of food at home, which I hadn't really done before because I was still very young and I didn't have a lot of skill in the kitchen yet. It takes some time to learn these skills. In graduate school, I got so sick from endometriosis that I couldn't function because there was no time of the month when I felt well and not in pain. So my doctor put me on some very severe drugs that meant that I went into menopause, a very shocking menopause where I had extreme hot flashes and some crazy moods, let me tell you, some paranoia, difficulty sleeping. I don't know how I survived. I was only 25 when I went on these drugs. I wish so much that I had known what I know now, because I don't think that I would have had to struggle in these ways. I think I could have healed from endometriosis. I don't know that for sure because I did not get the chance to try. I graduated with my second master's degree on a Friday and was scheduled in Monday for a hysterectomy with removal of my ovaries. Once again, I wish I had known then what I know now. The hormone craziness over the next few years was really difficult. It was a very hard time in my life, but I got through that. I wasn't ever quite right. I didn't know if it was from the fact that I had so many diagnoses and my body was just fighting to find some sort of equilibrium. I didn't know if there was something additional going on that we didn't know about. I didn't know if it was just recovery from such a major surgery. But I never was able to work full time after that. Even though I had a good job, I just had too much trouble with stamina and my fatigue was still pretty high. About 7 to 10 years after I graduated, I was getting sicker again. My digestion was really bad. I was not having solid poop almost ever. And then I started having severe pain, and that kind of became normal. So I kind of, and unless it was at an extreme peak, I kind of thought, oh, this is just normal. This is just my digestive system working, or it's just gas or something like that. until one day I was at a continuing education conference and I was sitting in my car to eat my lunch because it was very cold inside the conference center and it was warm in my car. I lived in Arizona at the time, so I probably didn't stay in my car for very long because it was probably too hot in there. But I was warming up from being in a cold conference center and I had such a bad pain that I thought I might pass out. And the next day I had blood in my stool. And I was very scared because when I had endometriosis, the reason my doctor told me that we needed to pursue surgery, the medications had not helped, and the reason we needed to pursue surgery was because the endometriosis was on my intestines. It was hooked on to the outside of my intestines, inside my abdomen. If you don't know about endometriosis, the lining of the uterus escapes from the uterus and grows elsewhere. Kind of like how a cancer would grow sneaky like in your body, but it is not cancer. It's just this lining from your uterus. But of course, this lining is not meant to grow in these other places. And so when it grows, it can also release blood because that's what the lining of the uterus is supposed to do. But it does this in places where it should not be happening. So it causes a great deal of pain and disfigurement inside you because it's kind of like a spider web. It attaches onto things and it pulls things, and it had one of my ovaries was all scrunched up and it's kind of gluey and sticky. And so the concern was if it continued to grow, that it would perforate my intestines. This is really bad because then what is inside the intestines can get out into the abdominal cavity and cause a great deal of trouble. Of course, we don't want that, which is why I agreed to go ahead with the surgery that I did not want. And a surgery that, of course, has never stopped giving me side effects since the day that I had it. At the time, I did not know better. Now I know better, so I will do better. When I had blood in my stool, I was convinced that the endometriosis was back, which was why I was having all this abdominal pain, and that it had indeed perforated my intestines, and that's where the bleeding was coming from. So I talked immediately to a gastroenterologist and had to schedule a colonoscopy. Now I know that that's no big deal, but I was really embarrassed about bodily functions. I wasn't embarrassed so much about the gynecological side of things because I had already had to deal with so much there and talk to so many professionals about that was fine at this point. But the whole digestive system at the time was really embarrassing to me, and I was kind of humiliated to know that someone was going to stick a camera up my butt. I was grossed out. I didn't like the prep. I threw up a good portion of the prep stuff because I have a really sensitive digestive system. Now I know that you can ask your gastroenterologist for an anti-nausea medication, Zofran, and then it makes the process of drinking all that prep much easier, which is what I've done every colonoscopy since then. When the results came back, that same day, of course, they take biopsies and they can see what's in there. So my gastroenterologist said, we saw some colitis in there. Maybe it's a temporary viral type of colitis. We don't know, but we did some biopsies, so we will be able to find out more information. So I went home and recovered and got a call not too long after that from my gastroenterologist himself, which I did not expect. And he said, Christy, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but it looks like you have Crohn's disease. And I didn't even know what Crohn's disease was at the time. There was one person I knew, a friend of the family, an older man who'd had Crohn's most of his life, and he was really thin and constantly going to the toilet, and I just didn't think it could possibly be the same thing. So I asked for more information, and then of course I read everything that I could, and I was quite discouraged and sad and scared because of the statistics of how many people who have Crohn's disease don't live very functional lives. A lot of productivity, a lot of energy is taken from their lives because of this diagnosis. And a good portion of people who get this diagnosis have to have portions of their intestines removed, which is, of course, a really large surgery as well that I did not want to have to go through. I'm not anti-doctor, but I'm suspicious of medical procedures because I've been through many and none of them are without lingering effects. I did not know what to do with this diagnosis, so I read as much as I could, and then I started making a plan. At the time, my plan mostly involved supplements, appropriate rest and walking and sunshine and outside time and prayer and meditation, and things that are proven to help with any sort of chronic illness. But I did not get better. I got worse. I had another colonoscopy about a year later, and my condition had worsened a bit. I had increased areas of noticeable inflammation, and my fatigue level was worse. I was spending a lot of time on the couch. Around this time, I had to quit my job altogether because I couldn't function. I had very little energy and was spending a lot of time zoned out, watching TV. There was a lot of depression during this time because I did not feel like my life had very much quality. It felt like I didn't have very much hope. One day I was browsing around for hope, and I found Dr. Michael Greger's video on Crohn's and a nearly plant-based diet. And I was scared because I did not want to shift from my well-known omnivorous diet to a plant-based diet. That seemed like too much, especially when I was so sick. But I also was intrigued by what he said that the science says, and I read the paper for myself multiple times. I printed it out. I talked with my gastroenterologist about it, and he said, I'm okay if you decide not to go on medication right now, but if things get worse, I'm not okay with that. We need to control this inflammation. And of course, there are other things that go along with systemic inflammation, like joint pain, skin problems, all of which I had, and I wanted to be rid of it if at all possible. I slowly switched to a plant-based diet, and this means, of course, that I ate only things that come from plants, nothing that comes from an animal. No meat, no eggs, no dairy, including cheese. That's all I can think of at the moment, but nothing that comes from an animal. And I needed to play around with this quite a bit because it's a difficult shift when I had nobody to train me. There was nobody in my life at the time who had ever considered such a thing. And there weren't as many. This was 10 years ago is when I finally became plant-based completely. And I grew up in Minnesota. It's a very dairy type of state, and I didn't really want to tell anyone what I was doing because I didn't want to get feedback that I was a weird, witchy hippie. I'm okay being a weird, witchy hippie now because the transformation has been very, very slow, but miraculous. I feel like God sent that video to me from Dr. Greger. I will link to it right there. And I feel like he was behind all of this because I recently, 10 years after my initial diagnosis of Crohn's disease, I had another colonoscopy. Of course, I moved back to Minnesota where I grew up. And of course, new doctor, patient with Crohn's, not on medication. That's questionable. We need to check that because something really bad could be going on in there. So I had another colonoscopy a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, something around there. And these are the results. No evidence of Crohn's disease. The gastroenterologist at my new clinic said there was no sign I had ever even had Crohn's disease. And he did not believe me when I told him that I had a diagnosis. Of course, he should have been able to get the paperwork from my previous clinic, but there was some confusion, so he didn't have it by the day of my exam. I cried when he told me this because, of course, it's been a very long road and there have been a lot of ups and downs, and it was terrifying, to be honest, to try to treat a really serious illness without the medications that doctors typically prescribe for this disease. I need to say I'm not a doctor. I do not recommend that you stop following your doctor's advice. Please follow your doctor's advice. Get medical help if you have digestive problems, especially if you are bleeding, having serious pain, not able to poop, or having diarrhea. These are all signs that something is wrong. Sometimes we need a doctor to diagnose us so that we know what the path is, the traditional path, and so that we can decide which pieces of treatment we want to use. It is our bodies, and we do get to choose whether we want steroids, whether we want biologics, or whether we don't. And most doctors are willing to work with you, at least at the beginning, to get you under control, and then you can add in additional, maybe non-medicinal treatments after that. I'm going to do more videos on this topic because I have learned a lot in these years, and obviously what I have done has worked for me. I do have to say, though, that I am not perfectly energetic and full of stamina all the time. I still have issues with maintaining my stamina. I still have issues dealing with fatigue at times, and I have to lead a slower life than I used to lead. I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, because I think most of us lead such hectic lives that it contributes to whatever illnesses that we might be vulnerable to. I'm super grateful that I have a husband who's been with me this whole time, who has been able to support us financially during the times when I couldn't work at all. And I'm super grateful now that I can work a little bit. I am a curriculum developer for a curriculum that I wrote and I distribute. So I work from home. I can have a flexible schedule for those days where I need to rest more. And I am able to have some income, but not feel that drive that I have to constantly be pressuring myself to work more and do more, even though I kind of do. It is a problem that I have, that because I'm a little bit limited still, I don't feel like quite enough of a human being. And I'm pretty sure that's common amongst those of us who have some sort of chronic illness or illnesses. I don't particularly like to think of myself as someone with a chronic illness because, according to the colonoscopy, my Crohn's is gone. I do believe that I could get it back, should I wish to, by eating how I used to eat, by living how I used to live with all of that pressure, and I don't want to bring it back. So it is a good reminder to me that sometimes a more peaceful life, a slower paced life, is a better life. And I do think my life is better now, and my husband's life is better now than it was even before I got sick. Well, that is my story. That's the background of this channel. And I am going to post more videos on issues related to Crohn's, related to healing from Crohn's. I don't really want to talk about Crohn's itself because it's a stupid disease. It's terrible, and it steals joy and health, and it steals. It's a thief. However, it's also a teacher. And I've learned a lot by the journey that I've taken to get better. I'm going to share what I eat. I'm going to share what I've changed about my lifestyle. I'm going to share things that I avoid. And we can have some more healing together. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you don't have Crohn's and that you're just here for fun, because it's so exciting to talk about plant-based diets, which it is. They are miraculous and world-saving. But if you do have Crohn's, please take hope, because there are a lot of things that we can do to help ourselves. Medication can help. In my case, I ended up not needing it. I'm not sure that that's going to be the case for you, but who knows? It might be. I know other people also who have gotten better from Crohn's without medication. So you might be one of those people too. Take hope, and I will see you next time. Thanks for being here. Bye.